this morning, this afternoon. The time has disappeared. This afternoon, our leader-led call is with Jane Retimana from Payments New Zealand. I apologise for my dog in the background. You might be able to hear. But Jane, I have known from when I was involved in payments at Payment Express, and I think one of the lovely things was we found each other as two Māori women. I was brand new to the industry, and so she very kindly took me under her wing a bit and taught me what I needed to know in that payments world. So we're going to cover a few items today, starting off with an intro. There will be some opportunities at the end of time to ask some questions as well. And as we did before, we'll put together a video recording of this session, and we will have an article as well. So with that, I'll hand over to you, Jane, just after an intro really to cover your early career, the progression in your career and where you are today.
Kia ora koutou, ko Jane Retimana toko ingoa, ko te uri o te uri ahau, rawa ko Ngāti Whātua te hapu e te iwi, haere mai koutou e kaupapa o tēnei rā. Happy te wiki o te reo. And yeah, so Jane Retimana, I am I'm an Aucklander born and bred, but my whakapapa, my Māori whakapapa is into Ngāti Whātua ki Kaipara, so up in Te Uri Ahau Hapu, which is around the Dargaville areas where my Māori whakapapa relates to. And on my mum's side, my mum is Pākehā. Her family's been here for many generations of English and Irish descent, actually. So that's who I am in our world of Te Ao Māori when we introduce ourselves. So yeah, thanks to Rosie for asking me along today. And when you get these types of invitations, you're not really always sure what you can share with others about your career and journey, and whether in fact anyone would find it inspirational or enlightening at all. But I'm very happy to be here, and thanks for inviting me. Had an interesting, I suppose it's important to kind of share with you like who I am and how I've grown up. So I actually grew up in Auckland and Devonport with, you know, in a bicultural family, Māori and Pākehā, and grew up on the North Shore, which if you're from Auckland, you probably understand the North Shore vibe, and had kind of, you know, parents worked really hard to give our family a lot of opportunity, and actually, and this is going way back, but in sixth form, actually, I was an exchange student for a year to South America, to Brazil. So I think that kind of started me on a particular journey somewhere, probably where I've ended up today. So that was interesting. When you're 16, I was quite young, to be away from a year living in a country that didn't speak English, obviously. So quite a few years on now, though, my Portuguese is very terrible. So it's really one of those things that if you learn a second language, or you're blessed with being brought up with two languages, keep it up, because man, it's difficult when you're older to pick it up. And then came back, went to uni, swapped degrees a few times, and then ended up, coming out with a business degree, and kind of stumbled. My first really career was in early childhood. So and that sounds really fancy, but my mum ran an early childhood centre, still does these days. And so all through school, all through university, I actually worked there as a daycare teacher, or the cook one day, or the teacher one day, or the teacher's aide one day. So probably my first career was looking after children under 5, everywhere from babies up. And in those days, they could have a mix of professional early childhood teachers and people aspiring to do that. I didn't do working with kids for that long. I knew that wasn't the career for me, but I did enjoy it. And then after that, I've had a few opportunities. I started out my professional life in the public service and spent quite a long time in the Ministry of Justice had a lot of roles in there, but in the if you ever get to work for the government, that is a good, in the public service, it's a really good training ground for a lot of kind of transferable skills, and you learn about bureaucracy, and you learn ways to get around that, and you learn how to write really good reports to ministers and others. So spent quite a long time in there, and probably spent a little bit longer than naturally I would have, because I also had got 2 children, and so when I was in government, I also had probably four of those years actually were on maternity leave or part-time, coming back after having children. And then did probably the last few years there I spent in kind of transformational change programs. And if you've ever worked in a government department or get the opportunity to, those are great programs to get involved in, because they kind of, all the shackles of bureaucracy come off, and you get to be quite, creative and inventive in your thinking, and you don't always end up implementing that, but it was really cool for me from a service design point of view. A lot of the design thinking goes into those programs. Not always comes out of those programs, but you get exposed to a lot of different things. And then from there I've ended up in Payments New Zealand actually. So I've again had lots of different roles. It's a little bit like when you're in government departments. Payments New Zealand is a cat herding kind of organisation. We try and rally lots of industry groups and roles and people together, all the banks and Felicity and others, try and kind of wrangle them in terms of strategy and investment and innovation, and really trying to evolve those systems to pretty much support economic activity and support Kiwis going about their lives. So that's kind of the career journey without going through actual roles and stuff. But
I think there was this one question from Michaela, really interested to see how you got that first step into government before we move into a few more questions.
Well, like a lot of jobs, my next door neighbour, who I used to nanny for her kids, was the manager there. And so I was coming to the end of my degree, and I used to kind of nanny for her and look after her kids, now and then. And she was like, well, why don't you come and work here for 6 months? Because I've got this gap, this lady's leaving, I've been there forever. You'd be the youngest person by about 20 years to come and work in there. It was quite a very interesting times then. And so kind of wandered in and had an interview with someone that I didn't really realise was quite an interview at all. I thought it was just a chat. So, young and naive, but took the opportunity for 6 months. And then I was going to go travelling, and then I may have met my husband. My travelling plans may have been truncated, and I ended up being there for 12 years.
That's incredible.
In the different roles, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, Michaela always talks about the squiggly line of careers. That's certainly an unplanned.
Yeah, I think you can always think there's a straight line to things. Like I was talking with my team this morning about some strategy work, and it's very clear to see the straight line. It'd be so easy if we just followed it. It's clear and obvious, but it's so far away. Like you do have to weave and kind of bob and take the opportunities where they come. And I think, even though I haven't actually worked for that many organisations, I've definitely taken a lot of opportunities for roles, or if you get tapped on the shoulder, and sometimes you just don't know what the future will bring, so you kind of like that, go and work there for 6 months, and then you make a whole career out of it, because life changes and you change, and
it's being open. And I think that's a really important point, because you don't know what's on the other side of that. So on the next question, which was around, your current level of success, you're a GM of strategy at Payments New Zealand, you're involved with boards. Given the gender gap in payments and especially amongst those banks that you have to herd. How do you think you've reached that level of success in that type of environment? And you come from government as well, which is great, but what other words of wisdom do you have there?
I'm not sure you ever really feel like you're successful. I mean, not that you don't think you're successful, but I think, I suppose mindset, there's always something else to achieve or something else to do or somewhere else to go and look for something. So I don't think, and it's been great talking to you, Rosie, because sometimes people reflect back to you the perception of success or other that I don't honestly see or think about that in that way. But I think for the actually I've in this role I've had some I've got a really good CEO and we work very closely together, and he, I suppose, between us we've created quite an honest relationship. And so what I have felt from a woman perspective, because it is at some point when you're in a position of leadership, you have the opportunity to have an honest decision with people that can make a change. So over the years, in terms of my own, where I sit in terms of relative to others and the value that I bring and how that looks from a remuneration scale, and for those that report to me, you do have to really advocate for that and have quite honest discussions. So quite a few years ago, I said, well, what's that pay relative, not for myself, but my team, why is that person's tenure trumps that person's achievement? Because often it's like, male, the tenure, the length of time they're so much higher than women that actually are performing really, really well, but they're young into the role. And
just speaking to your audience here, lots of nods and
yeah. And so when you get into a position where you feel comfortable that you could affect that change, you should take it. And they're hard, uncomfortable, or they're slightly uncomfortable discussions to have, but you should have them. You should lean into them if you can, or but that's part of your whole relationship building and jobs, building relationships up and across and down, that you can actually have quite honest and frank conversations like that. And I think, I've been able to affect that and where I am at the moment, but that's supported by a really good CEO who's a man who wants to make sure that we have a fair workplace and everything.
Yeah, well, half answers my next question as well, because I know you work as an advocate for women and for your teams, and I wanted to know who has been an important advocate for you. So I know there's Steve, there's the CEO, but or mentor, and what you think about that mentoring relationship.
Yeah, I actually haven't had too many mentors, structured mentors through the years. I did in my early career as a line manager. I think when I was in my early 20s, at one point I was managing about 60 people in an operational role. I definitely needed a mentor then, to be fair. And so I think it's a accumulation of advice over the years, and I think I have been lucky to grow up, and I come back to kind of my bicultural kind of whānau and some things from tikanga Māori that are just instilled in how we've grown up, and a very hardworking mum, more of an aspirational dad, but a lot of tikanga in terms of I don't know, how did you kind of like manaakitanga, giving mana to others creates mana for yourself. The kind of being respectful but being true to who you are, and that, like a thing in Māori is, and actually not just Māori, but a strong sense, I suppose, in my whānau, is that no one's above you and no one's below you, and you're as good as anyone else. And we really grew up with that sense that, you know, it didn't really matter if you were talking to the Prime Minister or in a room with them, like they're just another person and you're just another person, and, you know, they do hold a role which you may respect or not, depending on who it was, but, you know, like it just never feel below someone else and never feel above someone else. And I think that was obviously fundamental advice that I've taken through my career. I've had some other really good advice over the years, particularly from women. So I used to work with this lady, and she always used to go, and I do see it a bit now, she was going, put your big girl knickers on now, Jane. You just have to put your big girl knickers on, you know, and have courage and, you know, front up to all those judges and tell them what, you know, back in the day, or, you know, put your big girl knickers on. Patsy Reddy Dame Patsy Reddy, who's now the Governor General, used to be on our board, and she's hugely inspirational because, and I'm sure she's okay, I've repeated the story a few times, so if it ever gets back to her, I hope I'm okay, but she was on our board when she was approached to be the Governor General. And I remember her coming along to a women's event that we were hosting and saying that she had imposter syndrome, where she really sat there and went, oh my God, that's great. And then the kind of dawning realization of, oh my God, am I able to do this? Am I good enough? Do they know what, you know, who I am, what I do? Is it? And I have followed her in that role. I mean, she's been amazing, Governor General for New Zealand. But to me, you know, even seeing that, like, leaders being really honest about their own struggles and their own journeys, like, kind of hugely inspirational as well. Because someone of that caliber, to be second guessing, you know, like to have that moment of second guessing and going, oh my God, you know, can I do this? Personally, I find that as inspirational as her doing it. The fact that, you know, she kind of went through the same emotions that we all do.
Yeah, and you know, we talk a lot. We talk a lot about imposter syndrome in our group. Sorry, Michaela, you were going to say something there?
Yeah, I really like what you just said, Jen, and I feel I totally agree with you. And I hear people in, you know, really high-end positions in their careers say that they experience it too. It almost feels like it gives me permission to know that it's okay to feel all of those things. Yeah. And like we all do. So it's just so refreshing, I think, when other people feel that. So I'm glad that you're completely transparent around that space as well.
And every day. This morning I had that, like, not so much impossible, but oh my God, what are we doing? You know, how are we gonna move there? And then you just you do in your career and every day, and work's challenging, which makes things equally as satisfying when you work it through. But the big girls knickers, you know, like the resilience, that's something you just got to pull your socks up sometimes and push through complex, challenging career situations or in the workplace. You know, there's a lot of things that get thrown at you.
Yeah, I had a GM that used exactly that same term all the time, so I know. Carrie Ann asked if, in terms of the squiggly line, so I've got a question here as well. This is two sides of nearly that same question. So she'd love to know, you know, saying yes to things that come up, how do you balance that pressure against taking too much on? And I'd also had a question about, you know, balancing work and life. So it's kind of the progression of how you balance the stuff at work and then how do you balance work and life, if you can share tips there.
Well, you're probably talking to someone that does an absolutely terrible job at that, to be fair. I have way too much going on at the moment. So as well as the day job, I also am on the Executive Council for Digital Identity New Zealand. I'm also on as an independent director on a primary health organisation, but there's actually two boards. There's a limited liability board and the primary health organisation as the Māori independent director on that. And I also chair my daughter's school's board of trustees. So I'm just way too many. The board of trustees finishes at the end of the year. She's leaving that school. I've said till December and someone else can do it. But I suppose I've said yes to a lot of those opportunities because that governance side of the directorship, the the guidance and the strategy is probably something where my career will morph into more and more. So I've picked up quite a lot of those opportunities, but it's pretty hard they tend to all impact at once. So if they were all kind of nicely smoothed out, it would be totally okay. But when things come up, they tend to perk up at the same time. So again, sometimes you just got to deep breath.
I think it's interesting, as you say, that happens because you can enter into a period of your career where you're searching for a lot of this and just an opportunity to get one. Then you build some momentum and you get this recognition and acknowledgement, and all of a sudden the floodgates open, and then it's, well, what can I manage, and realistically, what can I handle? So that's a great point in terms of you set some boundaries with the board of the school and those types of things.
Yeah. And I think if you choose to have children or pets or something that's in your home world, in your actual life, not your work life, having good support systems, partners, is really important. So my husband and I, over the years, he picked, he's had to pick up a bit of slack here and there, he's also works full-time, kind of all swings and roundabouts. So in life, having those good support systems around you kind of help you to get through on the home front as well. This year, I started out before this year happened, but every year I set myself some New Year's resolutions, which I'm actually terrible at, but there's some things that I set, like one year I was like, no, I'm gonna, when you come from a big family, you're always waiting for your family to turn up to things, or you're always having to change plans and stuff. So a few years ago, that was my first resolution. I was like, I'm not waiting for them. We're just going to do our own thing. And if they join family things, that's all good. And if you do come from a big family, that is, the logistics around organising people, even for a dinner, is just atrocious. And then what I kind of learned from doing stuff like that is you can kind of manage your life the way you want to. So funnily enough, all the family kind of fell into line that year. And then this year, this is random, so I've gone totally off on a tangent, but sometimes you've got to, last year I was like, okay, I'm going to take opportunities, so I'm not going to say no to anything, and that's how I've ended up with too many things on my plate. But that's kind of given me some other stuff. And this year was actually my has been to embrace more of the te ao Māori aspects of my life and try and integrate those into my life. So anyway, just a bit of insight, but sometimes
love it. Yeah, no, that's amazing. We've got 6 minutes left. I've got maybe 1 or 2 more questions, so I just want to open the floor before we get into the last couple of questions to make sure people have time, if there's anything anybody wants to ask right now.
I'm getting in first. Amazing to hear you speak on all of that, Jane. I could just listen to you speak for hours. And we love tangents here, so feel free to keep going. I had just one question. You actually answered around the self-doubt and imposter syndrome, which was something I wanted to speak to you about, but particularly for 2020 and just the roller coaster it's all been through, what do you draw on to find motivation to keep pushing forward in your career?
I think this year I answered, the survey Rosie sent me, or the questionnaire about what's your biggest challenge, and I said something, but actually I would totally change it. I think this year has been an absolute challenge and continues to be a challenge. So even with the growth mindset, as opposed to the opposite, it's still a challenge, but I think, I often think, I'm in a really privileged position that I have a job, and I still love what I do. Not every minute of the day, I must say, but I still, I'm in a really lucky position compared to a lot of people, and I can still do stuff that affects change, that we can still push forward. Other people rely on me for their jobs and what they're doing. So I think that resilience to control the things that you can control, keep pushing ahead, try and keep, you know, on the tough days, because it is tough personally and professionally and career-wise, you know, like, you know, I even, you know people that were looking for career changes, and now that's a little bit on the, well, should I, shouldn't I, what's the risk in doing that now? So I think the thing is that life continues to change and evolve, and it will look a bit different in a few months, and then it will look a bit different after that. So, you know, if you get opportunities and you balance those out and you think that they're good to follow, you know, trust your gut. I think that's a bit of advice that everyone probably gets, but sometimes it's definitely true. Like, what's your first instinct? And if it's to go for it, go for it. But yeah, I think we need a lot of resilience at the moment.
Great advice. Very well answered.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Great. I had a couple of questions during the time, which really helped.
Yeah.
Well. Any last words, Jane? You know, we've got 3 minutes left. I know we've covered a lot today. It was lovely, as always, to hear you speak and catch up. And like I said, there's been a great, we hadn't worked together for ages, and the ability to be able to pick up, it shows the strength of relationships that women can carry across different jobs and moving into different industries. And so I thank you for that support and for being here today. And this will be shared with the wider audience. And I think just being able to share maybe the last pieces of what you think is important for women to bring into the workplace.
Yeah,
they are, and what strengths we naturally bring.
Yeah, I think personal integrity is huge. So be true to yourself. Like, I know a lot of women, like, advice to women is along those lines, but actually really be true to yourself. Like, if you've got value to add, you will add it by being yourself, not by molding into something else or just giving a little bit of, like, kind of give your, be true to yourself. And I think be flexible. We come across so many people that are easy to work with, hard to work with, not quite sure where they're coming from. You're not, you know, like, I think to kind of make it, particularly into leadership roles, you have to be super flexible, and you have to be kind of tolerant of people but want to, you know people or get to know them and get to know their own life stories, and kind of having flexibility around your relationships, and bringing your kind of true self and having personal integrity kind of helps you move through the ranks, and for people to trust in you, and you get more satisfaction when you're yourself than anyone else. And I think Felicity, you know, Felicity and Rosie, probably those of us that have been, all of you look so much younger. You know, like, we will have plenty of examples when we haven't been ourselves and it hasn't gone. You just don't feel good. You probably won't get the outcomes you're looking for. So, and getting into things that aren't aligned with your kind of own moral compass, so that's not really going to take you anywhere.
Doesn't lead you to the good places. Yeah, you're absolutely right. What a fantastic way to round that off. I couldn't agree more in terms of being whole human. It's great to see that there's so much more of that happening, those types of discussions happening within organisations. Really appreciate your sharing, Jane. Thank you, everyone, for tuning